Back here, 615 Sessions podcast on the GetBeast.com Zoom line. Couple of old friends, Jon Burton from NewsChannel 5 and Teresa Walker, award-winning journalist for the Associated Press. Hello, friends.
Hello, Buck. How are
Lisa,
you?
how do you feel about him calling us old?
I was going to get to that. Yeah, old friends. I guess he's feeling frisky that he's counting himself as old enough to have old friends. Now, I'm not taking that as us being old because no.
Right. Well, here's the thing about getting older and having birthdays. Never stop having them. Never stop getting older. So that means you're still alive. So I'll
Amen.
take it. Great to be on with you, Buck.
Listen, it was no shot at the two of you. Okay, it's just been a lot. We've been around each other enough. Like I have basically grown up in and amongst my Titans media member friends. So I consider you guys at this point. 5 years we're into this thing. We're old friends at this point.
Has it been 5 years? Boy, it's flown by.
It feels longer than that, though, that you've been around, Buck. I mean,
No, and that's a good thing.
It is. It's nice to have you in our mix of media. You bring a certain attitude that keeps it spicy, interesting.
You do a great job. You add a little bit of swag, a little bit of that, a little bit of that flavor. We like it. Us old timers like me and T, we like it.
Now you're calling me old, JB. What is it?
How the tables have turned. Now the focus is on Jon Burton.
This podcast is off to a great start, isn't it?
They always seem to go this way, John. So this is par for the course based on we just don't have Rex Road around here to make any dick jokes to make Emily proud and comfortable. But I'm sure we'll get through all of these things in due time. Look at Teresa making a face like she wants to smack me.
No. I'm just trying to, there's so many things I could say, and I'm choosing not to.
It's because you're a professional, Teresa. We have a lot to discuss with our friends, the Tennessee Titans. They have now clinched 5 straight winning seasons, 3 such under Mike Vrabel as head coach. Derrick Henry was a badass. Teresa Walker very much enjoyed me getting dragged across the internet yesterday as Derrick Henry was running for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He now sits atop a list with Jim Brown, with LaDainian Tomlinson, and with Barry Sanders. So we will discuss that at great length. In fact, we'll start with it now because, Teresa, I think you and Joe Rexrode, I'm not going to defend what I put out there. I'm going to let you set the scene for the people. I will say, though, that I think I was taken out of context, and I think that yesterday was an easy opportunity to pile on me. Because for the people who don't know, I put out, it was either on Thursday or Wednesday, I can't remember, the Jags, every time for the common people, for the layman, every time the Titans head into a week, we get 2 pieces of propaganda, one from the Titans and one from the team that they're playing. They come in a media release packet. And so in the Jags propaganda machine, there was a comparison between James Robinson, their rookie undrafted free agent running back, and Derrick Henry, because they have both been statistically good this season. So I took the screenshot, I put it out there, I said running backs are not that much different, no matter how big a deal people want to make out of Derrick Henry and all of the great things that Derrick Henry has done, even though I believe him to be exceptional. And people, of course, the internet has no context, has no what do you want to call it? No. They're not there for the conversation. They just feel like somebody's attacking their favorite player and they want to take you down. And maybe I did deserve to be taken down a little bit, but Teresa, you helped pile on. You were the voice of the people. You were leading the angry mob with pitchforks and torch in hand.
Well, absolutely. And here's the thing. I make the argument, it's become in vogue over the last decade to say that running backs aren't worth anything. You can get another new one in the draft. The big deal to Todd Gurley was kind of the last one. And people are like, oh, see his knees. Don't do that. It's horrible. It's a waste of money. Just get the next Joe Schmo coming out in the draft. And my argument is that guess what? The greats are few and far between. But when you look at what Derrick Henry is doing and has the possibility of doing this season, he's got a chance. The whole 2,000-yard talk, I'll get excited about that when he gets within, to 1,800. But he has a chance to be the first guy to repeat as rushing champ. First time, it hadn't been done since LaDainian Tomlinson did it in 06-07. And when you look back through history, the name, it's been done a few times, but by some of the same guys. Adrian Peterson, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders just took turns dominating the 90s. Then there was O.J. Simpson in the 70s. Earl Campbell did it 3 straight years in the late 70s. But that's an elite group of people. And what Derrick Henry is doing is he's absolutely putting himself in that conversation. Yesterday, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4th such game in his career, to put him out of a tie with, Jim Brown and those guys. That's elite company. And there is a value to that. So yeah, as soon as I saw that NFL thing, that's when I tweeted out, this is why you pay some of these guys. And that was absolutely a slap at you, because you and the others who want to downgrade the running back, because the great ones are hard to find. And, let's face it, the Titans, we weren't sure if they'd ever figure out how to do it, right? Early, he was behind DeMarco Murray to start his career. And then it was like, just give him the ball, let him work. And it took the Titans time to figure out what they had in Derrick Henry. So pay the man and quit pinching pennies like it's your money and coming out of your wallet.
JB, you've seen plenty of wrestling matches in your day. Referee this one.
Well, you know what? T makes a lot of good points because, to me, the running back position is my favorite position in all sports. I used to be a running back, and when I played rugby all those years, the position I played was kind of like a running back. So it always comes down to production and durability, and Derrick Henry has provided both, right? I mean, look, as a New York Giants fan, we spent the 2nd pick overall on a running back, and as great a player as Saquon Barkley is, and as great a person as he is, it really hasn't worked out because he's been hurt the last 2 years. Derrick Henry has shown the durability. He gets a lot of carries. So when the production and the durability is there, then yes, it is worth taking up a chunk of your payroll, a chunk of your salary cap to pay this guy. I thought the Titans did the right thing paying this guy in the offseason because dude's an alien. I mean, knock on wood, he's not been seriously injured. He's been nicked up here and there. But the way this guy conditions himself, the way he, stays focused during games, you never see him take a play off. You can't argue with the production, and obviously you can't argue with the durability. By and large, you don't – these days in the NFL, you don't normally, devote a lot of your salary cap to a running back. But in this case, you look at fit for the team, fit for the style of offense you want to run – with Arthur Smith and what they like to do with the Titans, it's a perfect fit. And, A, he's worth every penny, and B, my philosophy has always been you are worth whatever someone is willing to pay you. So I agree with Teresa Walker on that.
Listen, go ahead, Teresa. I'm sorry.
And just to follow up, Derrick Henry brings an intangible that you can't measure. The guy is always working. He's either in the sand pit or he's catching balls. The guy, he might not be in a drill. He's working. You see him working in the off season. He sets a tone for that locker room and a standard that has to be met by his teammates simply because if he's working that hard, I had better.
And he's a humble team first guy as well. And that, that's a rarity for big stars in today's sports. You see, I love the NBA as much as the next guy, but as I get older, these guys like Kyrie Irving and these guys, they just drive me nuts. When you have a guy like Derrick Henry, who the first thing out of his mouth is, like you said, Teresa, I don't care about stats. I want to win. I'm just happy to be on this team. I'm happy to be with these teammates. I don't take it as jock speak with Derrick Henry. I really think that's just how he is in real life.
God, I wish he was less humble. Just for the sake of a quote. He's so phenomenal.
Yeah, from our standpoint, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but, I'm sure the fans, from the fan standpoint, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better, he is by far the most popular professional athlete in our city. I know a lot of people love Roman Yossi and some of the Preds and Pekka and all that. He is hands down the most popular athlete in our city. but he's probably the most humble of any star athlete that we have in Nashville.
It infuriates me. And listen to me, every one of you people listening to this podcast, I love you all very much. You are my day ones, you are my P1s, but damn you all. I don't care what you want, but with humility in your superstars. I want a good quote. I want the big man to brag on himself every once in a while, just so I have something to write every Thursday when he gets up in front of the media and he says nothing. It drives me insane.
It's a little bit better because we're not in the locker room, but there were some days where I would walk out of there, and Derrick, as we all know, usually talks on Thursdays, and I would come out of there and be like, what am I going to use from this guy? Because like you said, the fans want to hear from this guy because of his popularity. So I agree with you a little bit there. It'd be nice to have a little bit more swag to him.
Henry's making us work harder too, because we have to think hard to try to come up with a question, to try to crack open that, the Henry nut, so to speak, to get him to say something good. If you can make him laugh or smile and loosen him up, we've got a chance of getting a quote, but those are few and far between.
That's why I got to do dumb stuff and rattle the cage every once in a while. Comparison stats, Teresa. Just got to poke people a little bit. Maybe I get something out of it. But listen to me. It was never about Derrick Henry and James Robinson. It's about the position for me, because ultimately, listen, I took the L on not wanting to give a running back a second contract. I didn't care who he was. Derrick Henry, all of your points here have been well taken, okay? I think it's good for the team. I think that who they are, it fits them perfectly. I think that he has been absolutely exceptional. And as JB said, he has been reliable. He has been durable. You said bumps and nicks here and there. It's really not even that. Like, I think as long as I've been here, he has had that one game against New Orleans where they sat him intentionally because it was the rare game that literally means nothing for your playoff chances. And he was dealing with some hamstring stuff, and they took it easy on him. Outside of that, he has been able to go for every game in the last 4 years. And for me, it's also about how much the team feeds off of who they are, because it's all predicated on him. And his refusal to let it be predicated on him because he's team first, as much as I hate it for the purposes of a quote. It's a lovely thing if you're trying to build a football team. It does gas bags and vultures like me nothing. It does me nothing to have them be selfless the way that Derrick Henry is. It's fine. But what I will say to you is, if he is the one that I'm wrong about, I'll live, right? Because what JB is saying with Saquon Barkley, people were, and listen, Dave Gettleman, everybody was calling Dave Gettleman an idiot for a very, very long time, and the Giants look like they seem to have some competency about him, which, again, makes me sad because Dave Gettleman is fun to make fun of. But on the whole, the running back experiment, whether it be Zeke and paying him $15 million a year, whether it be McCaffrey and the way that he's just physically fallen apart because his contract and his talent requires that he receive the bulk of the workload like Derrick Henry. Nobody holds up the way that Derrick does because he's a freaking machine. He's an alien, like JB said. On the whole, though, when I take it down to the idea of value and what Derrick Henry represents in terms of value, the thing that I was propping up more than anything, rushing yards don't mean anything to me. It's touchdowns and it's durability. And he scores. Of course, he is worth his weight in gold and however many millions that they paid him. And by the way, the contract was great. Like, even I couldn't be pissed about the contract that they got him on because it looks so much better compared to Zeke and McCaffrey and Kamara. Ultimately, though, Teresa, and I'll let you out, I'll shut up after this. It's how often can you keep him on the field? Derrick Henry doesn't miss games. And so that kind of balances it out a little bit. But when you look at a guy like James Robinson and a guy like Derrick Henry, and all things being equal, how often Derrick Henry has to come off the field, it's not just about the rushing totals. It's not just about 200-plus yard games. It's about how often can you use him. Derrick Henry's availability negates a lot of those points that even anti-running back zealots like me would make about what he is and what the position is commensurate to what you can get in an undrafted rookie free agent like James Robinson.
Well, it is your podcast, but James Robinson, it's fool's gold for the moment. He's on a team that is won one game and is 1-12 right now. So Derrick Henry, what he is doing and has done is for a team that is now had 5 straight winning seasons. He's doing it as the focus of an offense, the focus of defensive coordinators. I mean, Doug Marrone said yesterday they were throwing everybody in the box that they could, and he still had 170 by halftime.
Yeah.
So he is taking what defenses are throwing at him. He is the key to this offense, the durability factor, and so that those all pile onto it. And then you add the team-friendly contract. I mean, John Robinson wrote about as good a contract as you could. His contract, he got the extension, but it is not in the category of Zeke Elliott or Todd Gurley. This was a smart investment by the Titans. And this was Derrick Henry, again, that humble dude who told us repeatedly last year his contract didn't matter. He was all about football. Well, he kind of made that clear with the contract he accepted. I mean, you could not write the dude deserves more money when you look at his value this year, but he's getting paid, and that's not a part of it anymore. So it's smart deal all around. So, and again, you're comparing not just apples and oranges, you're comparing a really nice Yugo that doesn't have any bumps on it and a James Robinson to let's just Tony Dungy was calling him a truck, call him a tank. Tractor Cito, he's outperforming that. I mean, he's like one of those big John Deeres who just mows you over, but has a little Hemi in there, stuck in there, and a turbo boost, and he can just let go when he wants to. So there you go. He's
the damn Batmobile, JB. I hate it.
Yeah, that was a lot of great metaphors there by Teresa Walker. She's not a Hall of Famer for no reason.
It's like she's a writer.
Yes, exactly. All those creative ideas go through her head. But yeah, I mean, listen, you look around the league, you look at the Rams, like you said, they signed Gurley to that big deal and realized this isn't working. We got to let him go. Melvin Gordon Jr., shipped out of L.A. with the Chargers to the Broncos. And like I said, the Giants are going to have a big decision to make in a couple of years with Saquon coming off a major injury. It's like, all right, do we want to pay this guy? Or I have Wayne Gallman already for pennies on the dollar, and this guy was a part-time running back at Clemson, but he's been pretty good for us. So I think every situation dictates what you do, right? And you're right. The running back position has been devalued, and we've seen guys come out of nowhere. I mean, Terrell Davis was a 6th-round pick and this type of thing. But when you have the value financially and the production and the durability that I spoke of, it's just a good fit. And I think Derrick was smart enough to realize, you know what? I may not get as much money that I would on the open market if I waited, but guess what? I'm making a good penny, number one. Number two, we're in a world, we're in a global pandemic. Who knows what the future holds? I better cash in now. And number three, wherever I go next, Taylor Lewan's not walking through that door when he's healthy, and Roger Saffold's not walking through that door, and Ben Jones, and et cetera, et cetera. I've got a good scheme that fits my skills. I have a good offensive line to run behind. The only caveat with Derrick Henry is if the Titans get behind by a couple of more scores, usually that's when you find Derrick Henry on the bench because he can't really help you a whole lot in pass pro, and his hands are getting better, but still probably average at best. So, as long as you feed the big man and you get a lead and you can impose your will on the opposite team, Derrick Henry is about as valuable as any player you'll find in the National Football League.
The way that I kind of look at him is like this, because you guys, and it's not to age either of you, but it's how long I've been working in the NFL.
Yep.
The only running back that I've seen in 4 years covering the Tennessee Titans is Derrick Henry, like a little bit of DeMarco Murray. My first year was Malarkey's last year, so that was when DeMarco Murray's body was starting to fall apart, and I was in Nashville watching that first year that he was here, where Derrick Henry, or when he was the primary running back prior to Derrick's rookie year. But Derrick's rookie year was my first year as a Tennessee Titans reporter. And so, he's the only running back that I know or at least that I've covered full time and associate with, okay, this is what running backs are supposed to look like. And we've seen how he's evolved from,
yes,
frustrated because he's he's playing behind a guy who arguably should have been either benched or relegated to a different role because his body was failing him because of the physicality of that position, where he was getting those opportunities under Mike Vrabel, and up until the Patriots game where Fluellen went down with a knee injury, he was getting snaps behind him. And ultimately to this thing that we see before us now, where he's a total game changer. He is the equalizer, and more than that, he is the thing that determines their success on a game-to-game basis. But like with me, and I kind of came to this realization yesterday, because I try to be a little bit self-aware, even if ego dictates that I do otherwise. When I'm in the midst of getting dragged across the internet, which gave Teresa Walker great enjoyment.
I enjoyed it.
I know. You're just so petty, T. Just so petty.
I can't do it because of the pandemic, Buck. I can't pick on you in the workroom, so I have to go to Twitter to do it. I'm sorry. It's more public, but I'm trying not to do as much.
Burton, she literally texted me on Thursday and said, "I forgot how much I enjoy picking on you." And I'm
going to tell you something. Teresa Walker is my Twitter mom. I got duped draft weekend. I saw a false tweet that said the Giants had traded for Yannick Ngakoue, and I celebrated and I retweeted it. And she immediately was like, "This is a fake account. This is not a real story. You're an idiot." So Teresa Walker is my Twitter mom, and now she's your Twitter mom too, Buck.
Been my Twitter mom. It's absolutely untenable, even though it is necessary. Anyway. Ego aside, like I'm trying to sit back and reevaluate, okay, why am I so off about this, or why am I being blinded to what I'm watching on a regular basis? And immediately the comparison to me, and not just because they're exceptional at what they do, and not just because LeBron tagged Derrick Henry in an Instagram story and is clearly rooting for Derrick Henry's success because they're both named King at this point, but with LeBron across 20 years of watching basketball almost, this guy has been so spectacular for the entirety of his career that the feats that he accomplishes, the performances that he puts on, you take them for granted because you've seen him do it so many times and so consistently over the course of his career. And in a much smaller sample size, that's kind of what I think I'm doing with Derrick Henry, where he's the only running back that I've watched for the team that I cover on a game-by-game basis and through 4 years of doing this. So when Derrick Henry does have 200-yard performances, look, yeah, he's had 4 of them. So what? I've seen all 4. Well, it's not that impressive. Who the hell is Barry Sanders? Like, I don't know any of these guys. I haven't seen
Right, and see, that's the thing, Buck. Having grown up, and Teresa can attest to this, having grown up watching, I was a little kid when O.J. Simpson was growing up in upstate New York. O.J. Simpson was the man. And then, later on seeing guys like Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson and, getting to cover guys like Thurman Thomas when I was in Buffalo and Jerome Bettis when I was in Pittsburgh. When you have a stud running back that everybody feeds off of, it not only just energizes the team, it energizes the whole town. I cannot begin to tell you how popular Jerome Bettis was in Pittsburgh. He was beloved. That man was a god because he was a lovable guy, he was kind of like the chubby kid on the playground that got the ball and nobody could tackle, and he was very gregarious and stuff, but he was without a question the leader of the team and the energizer bunny of those Steeler teams. And I think Derrick, in his own way, because he's not as gregarious, obviously, as JB was, it's the same way. And you see how it's energized this team. You see how it's energized this city. Big picture, he's probably the exception that proves the rule. But, like I said, when you have someone like him that provides all the intangibles he does, both on and off the field and in the locker room, sometimes it's worth the investment. Most times you invest big money in a running back in the NFL, you get burned. Now, back in our day, T and I can tell you, the 90s were all about you needed a stud running back before you needed a good quarterback because you had to run the football. It's a different game now. You throw the ball, but still those basic principles, you can run the football, play good defense, you could win a lot of games and compete for championships in this league, and a guy like Derrick Henry helps you do that.
See, Buck's problem is recency bias because, again, that's who he's seen. I saw Earl Campbell, lead the NFL in rushing 3 straight seasons at the end of the 70s and win an NFL MVP as a running back. Watched Emmett and
Walter Payton.
Barry Sanders. When we've seen them. You darn kids. Go on YouTube. Even my son has seen some of those games. Eddie George, shoot, fans in that stadium were chanting Eddie, Eddie, well before they ever started doing Henry, Henry. So,
right. Eddie George hasn't bought a dinner in Nashville in about 15 years. He hasn't had to pay for dinner in Nashville in about 15 years.
Because people remember him putting together great performances. So, so yes, we can judge that. That's why we can see greatness and recognize it when we see it, Buck. You poor kid, you just hadn't seen enough.
Hey, you just got to get older, a little bit more seasoning. You'll get there, man. You'll get there. You're on your way.
Listen to me, both of you. The pandemic has aged me 15 years, I feel like. I
can see it on your face there, brother.
Teresa, disrespect. In what way? Listen, I understand that Uber Eats is a function of the pandemic, and that maybe my face looks a little rounder, and maybe I look a little more tired because I'm sitting in here all day. I'm pissed. I'm legitimately angry now. Teresa, what the hell?
I was not fat shaming you, Buck. I was just showing your age.
Oh my God! Hang on a second.
My eyes are a little more puffy. My face is round. I'm legitimately upset. I'm flustered. I want to bring this podcast to a screeching halt. My God.
You were the one talking about how this pandemic has aged you. I just barely noticed.
You don't got to point it out to people watching this on YouTube, Teresa. There are people that this is a simulcast product. Now everybody's looking at the bags under my eyes. It's like, oh my God, he does look. What the hell happened to him?
Hey, you can only see me from the shoulders up. I'm not. Trust me, I'm not fat shaming in a pandemic.
Just
wearing sweatpants, for God's sake.
Oh, I mean, listen. I'm so angry now. Anyway, I don't even know how to transition out of that. I'm legitimately.
Meanwhile, back on the playoff chase.
Playoff chase my ass. Get out of here, Teresa. AJ Brown, not aging. The game only improving from game to game. He is still very young in his career. Maybe, hopefully, he will not age as quickly as apparently I have. But A.J. Brown, yesterday, with a spectacular one-handed grab. Yesterday, as we taped this podcast, obviously the people hear it on Tuesday. But spectacular one-handed grab on the flea flicker. He comes out wearing the Julio Jones jersey and warm-ups, because we've documented many times since he has been a Tennessee Titan his love for A.J. Brown. That's why he wears the number 11. And he just wants to kind of personify greatness, and that's who he has said consistently to us that he's chasing. Yet today, Pro Football Focus put out a graphic of one of their analysts, one of the people that grades every snap. And whatever you think of Pro Football Focus, they are something that people gravitate to, regardless of how exactly the grades are determined. But the graphic said A.J. Brown is Terrell Owens. And A.J. Brown quote tweets this and says A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown, which I respect. But also, again, because I lack context, apparently, in everything but my physical features, I do not remember Terrell Owens as a player. So if the two of you, in your wisdom, I will not age you again, as Teresa has done to me, A.J. Brown and Terrell Owens, Teresa, fair comparison or not?
Well, if the fact that Terrell Owens is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a nice comparison, and I covered his very unique inductions acceptance in Chattanooga a couple years ago. But CBS tweeted out some stats. First 27 career games, A.J. Brown has more receptions, has over 700 more yards, 7 more touchdown catches than Terrell Owens had through their first 27 career games. So I think A.J. Brown's got a point. A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. And I think it was Rodney Harrison on the Sunday Night Football pregame talking that he might be the best receiver in the NFL. Now, what he doesn't have are the pelts on the wall, so to speak. He doesn't have the massive playoff win. And let's face it, this team is still yet to win a division title. If they can start putting some of those things together, and he keeps playing the way he's playing and cleans up some of the drops that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, he absolutely has a chance to be up there with the Julio Jones, all the Antonio Brown, all the recent great receivers that we've seen seen, because he's just got an ability to catch the ball and get yards after the catch. And that one-hander yesterday, that's one of the best catches by a Titans receiver that I can remember. You know, the closest thing I can get to it, Nate Washington had an incredible reaching over the back of a defender for a long ball against the Detroit Lions. But right now, A.J. Brown is absolutely creating his own path as himself as a receiver in this league.
What I liked about A.J. Brown yesterday, guys, is the fact that he shook off, you know, a not so great stretch of games, you know, where he was dropping passes. He had 2 fumbles in the game against the Browns. You know, he looked determined on Sunday that he was going to have a solid game. And, you know, I think you can make some comparisons to, by the way, it's Terrell Owens, not Terrell. It's Terrell Davis, Terrell Owens.
Fair enough.
Just for accuracy's sake. Yes.
That's
this is my broadcaster voice, by the way. You know, in terms of attacking the football while it's in the air, catching everything with your hands. And, you know, Terrell he would drop a few passes every now and then. But what I always liked about Terrell Owens, and what I really like and admire about A.J. Brown, once he gets the ball in hand, he becomes a running back. He's looking to juke people and or run people over. He's not – a lot of receivers are content, hey, I made the catch. I'm going to sit down here. I'm going to avoid the hit. We got the first down. You know, let's move on. This guy is looking to score every time he gets the ball in hand. And I think, you know, Julio Jones has that knack. Terrell Owens always had that knack. Odell Beckham Jr., when healthy, has that knack. And that's what I always like to see from a receiver. It's like, all right, you made the catch. What else you got? What else can you do? How can you make a big play even bigger? And A.J. Brown just, you know, once he gets the ball in his hands, he looks like a running back. He's kind of built like a running back. And, you know, I know he didn't clock a huge, you know, eye-popping time at the combine, but he's got that field speed, man. Once he gets a step on you, you're not going to catch him from behind. And, you know, he's another humble team-first guy, but you can tell he's playing with a lot of confidence. And I think he was determined to really have a solid game after a couple of subpar games in previous weeks, you know, with some drops and some fumbles.
Well, I think Tannehill makes all the difference in the world when it comes to that, because the drops have not dissuaded him from going away from A.J. Brown. They targeted him 9 times yesterday. And again, that's not Vrabel didn't act like that was intentional. He said the quarterback can throw to whomever the quarterback wants to throw to. And Ryan Tannehill threw at A.J. Brown 9 times. He caught 7 of them. He had 112 yards in that crazy 37-yard flea flicker catch. He represents to me what, at least, and again, recency bias is kind of the theme here today, but I've seen enough bad Titans wide receivers in 5 years to know that this is the thing that they have been so desperately searching for, what Corey Davis was hoped to have been, and what makes Corey Davis so much better with them as a tandem is A.J. Brown. And ultimately, when you have 2 guys like that you can feed off from game to game, and who, if the defense takes away one, you have the option to go to the other. We talked about this on the Thursday podcast with Derrick Mason, our good friend, that Corey Davis can dismantle you in those spots, and A.J. Brown is the game breaker. He is wide receiver number 1. With just kind of looking forward, because now they have Detroit. We don't know at this point, as we tape this at 3:05 on a Monday, whether Matt Stafford's going to play. He got hurt.
Not going to matter.
Yeah, not going to matter, apparently. It's a terrible Lions team, unfortunately, no longer coached by future Titans defensive coordinator Matt Patricia,
right,
for the sake of the Titans. If understanding that they have 3 more games that they have to figure out, 1 of them in the division and 2 that matter based on tiebreakers with the Colts, as they try to win that first division for the first time since 2008. Who would you guys rather face if the playoffs ended today, understanding what the matchups are? You get Indianapolis a 3rd time, or you get to see the Cleveland Browns a 2nd time. Teresa, what do you think?
I don't think it matters as much as how they're playing. I mean, we saw them go into Cleveland a year ago. Yes, different coach, different schemes. I know that. But, you know, this Titans team didn't show up in that first half. So if it's Cleveland coming here, I take my chances with the Titans and Mike Vrabel getting them ready. Maybe they even have Adoree Jackson back at that point.
Don't lie to people, Teresa. Don't lie to people.
I know. We're still, he's on IR? No, I'm kidding. But that's the thing. They're coming back in. What we've seen Mike Vrabel do is they are able to get ready for a team. And they looked at what the Browns, they've seen, the Browns tipped their hand on how they can attack them, right? So I would expect a better defensive approach and a better offensive start. I mean, they were moving down the field, and then the Titans were their own worst enemy in that first half. Same with the Colts. They shot themselves in the foot literally with the shank and then the block punt in that third quarter against the Colts here. And then they went up to Indianapolis, a place where they have literally had no hope over the last couple of decades. And they've now won 2 straight in Indianapolis against that team. So considering that it's about 3 quarters in 2 games against those 2 opponents that cost them wins in Nashville, I don't have a problem if they're hosting the Colts or the Browns, because that's a game that the Titans should be able to, be prepared for and play the best. It's going to be, I know it's a cliche, and I hate hearing them myself, but it's how they play. The Titans have the talent to absolutely beat both of them, no matter how their defense has been playing this entire season.
I don't know if they got the talent on defense. Go ahead, JB.
They beat this is an offensive team.
With all due respect to the great Hall of Famer Teresa Walker, what they did in Jacksonville did not alleviate my concerns about this defense. You guys both know I've been on this defense hard all season long. I don't like their inability to put pressure on the quarterback. I don't like their inability to get off the field on third down. This will not be, Mike Glennon and Gardner Minshew coming into Nissan Stadium. It'll either be Baker Mayfield or Phillip Rivers, who both lit you up in your own stadium earlier this season. So if I had to choose one, if you're making me choose one, I guess I would say the Browns. But I just, this defense, they played pretty well on Sunday in Jacksonville, but I think you got to consider who they're playing. This is an offense, Teresa, you're right, that can score with anybody. They are a lock for 30 points most weeks. But I have major concerns about this defense, and it may not matter because, the further you go in the playoffs, the better the quarterbacks you're going to be playing. And, right now, as I sit, I don't trust this defense. I flat out don't trust it. But if I had a choice, I'd probably say I would prefer to play the Cleveland Browns a second time.
This is not a defensive team by any stroke of any imagination. All they need to get out of them is a couple of plays here or there, maybe a turnover. And, here's the one thing. We haven't seen a ton of blitzing from them. So it's like I just feel that that's in the back pocket. Use it when you need it. But this offense is going to have to outscore anybody. How far they go in the postseason, it'll be, the offense cannot have a glitch where they have a turnover and stop themselves. They have to go out and win the games, which is really, really tough to say, having covered this team since they moved to the state, because it just seems so counterintuitive for the Tennessee Titans.
See, I'm kind of thinking that the Browns are a worse matchup for them based on what the Colts have going on the offensive line and the Titans' inability to get pressure. Like Quentin Nelson was playing left tackle there for a hot second against the Las Vegas Raiders, and it didn't matter because the Raiders stink, and I tweeted out a video of Vic Beasley getting his ass absolutely smacked by a wide receiver, 150-pound wide receiver, just absolutely decking him, which I'm sure gave Titans fans great enjoyment. But the Browns just caved their heads in up front. And that's the identity of the team. And I think Baker Mayfield is not very good. Like I don't care how good he looked against the Tennessee Titans, I still believe him to be a bit fraudulent. But I think when you have a unit like that up front, much like when the Titans had one of the better offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in football that year with Marcus Mariota and Mike Mularkey and Terry Robisky as the coordinator, I think that does make all the difference in the world, especially when you have a defense that just can't for the life of them get pressure. Adoree Jackson will make a bit of difference to me if they can't get home and these guys are being asked to cover. And honestly, based on some conversations that I had last night after the game, like I still think they're being asked to do too much on defense. Like I think that the play menu that they have in front of them, because there are so many diverse looks for the Tennessee Titans defensively. And I do think, Teresa, to your point, they still have a lot more that they're wanting to show. But I think that just because you practice something one time in training camp doesn't mean you can call it with full confidence in week 14 of the NFL regular season. And I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing on a regular basis, where they continue to tell us 14 or I guess 13 weeks in, because we haven't technically talked to anybody lately about bad defense,
Right.
where communication is still something that they cite. And I'm looking at this and saying, how could this possibly be so? Well, sometimes it's hard to communicate when all of these calls are being handed down because there's such a wide array that they have at their disposal. I understand Mike Vrabel's need for system continuity. That's the whole reason Shane Bowen's there. And Anthony Midget and guys like that who were brought in to help keep this thing going the way that Mike likes it. But I still think that there's a degree of it. When I watch them, they're still being asked to do too much. And I think that's working a little bit to their detriment.
71 players. They have played the most players that they've played since back in the 90s, with Marshall Newhouse, the latest offensive tackle, and a bunch of those new faces have been on defense. So I just think it's the newness and all these guys rotating in. I mean, shoot, Desmond King was a Charger at the beginning of October. Breon Borders, who's now on IR, he was a guy, this is his 8th different team. So some of this is guys coming in, trying to get them up to speed and having to keep it ABC simple with them. And not being able to tap into that playbook because they hadn't repped it. You're at a point of the season where you're getting ready for this week's game. You're not getting ready for stuff you may have gone over in August. And I'll go back to this. If Adoree Jackson, and I understand it's a massive if at this point, if it feels like they're trying to get him ready for the time that matters. We saw it last year. We were wondering in December, is he going to come back? He was available for the playoffs, and we saw that defense seem to just kind of click into gear. Now that may not, he may come back and that doesn't happen this year, but he gives them that piece in that secondary with Butler, Vaccaro, Byard. Those guys know each other. And by that point, Desmond King will be more familiar, and maybe you get a Christian Fulton back, but you hopefully get some pieces back, which will allow you to somewhat improve. And, they have been improving in recent weeks on third down. Not great. They're still giving up too many plays, and the Browns totally burnt them a week ago, but they don't have to make massive steps at this point. They just have to be, some incremental improvement that should be possible with some people returning.
My flags still go up, though, when you hear somebody like Kevin Byard, who's a Pro Bowler and All-Pro, one of the highest paid players at his position in the NFL, and a good guy and an honest guy, still say this part of the season we're having communication problems. That is a major flag up for me.
The newness, JB, I mean, that's the thing. They know what they're doing, but trying to make sure these new guys have it on point, I think that's a part of the big issue here.
I think there's something else going on with Kevin Byard. Like it doesn't add him.
Yeah, he just doesn't look like himself, does he?
It doesn't add up there to me. And I think there's a little bit, because we talked to Vrabel about this before, and I can't remember after which game, which it does nobody any good for me to be citing quotes that I can't put a finger on. But Vrabel was asked about like safety rotation and essentially said, yeah, it'd be great if we could rotate them a little more, but at the expense of who? And I mean, Byard, out of the three of them, if you're talking Vaccaro, Amani Hooker, and number 31, there is more inconsistency with the performances of Kevin Byard than the other two that we're talking about. And I can't help but continue to focus on that when Kevin Byard looks like the least consistent member of the secondary just on a season long at this point, through 13 weeks of the regular season. There's just something that doesn't make sense. Before we get out of here, because you guys have been gracious with your time, Tennessee smacked Vanderbilt down on Saturday. It was very disappointing for me. I was actively rooting against the Vols because who doesn't like a coaching search? And we may not be deprived. Shut up, she said. Teresa, I understand you worked very hard, but I'm only doing this for the ability to use funny GIFs on the internet. And they didn't lose, and it deprived me of one of my favorites, those two overweight, corn-fed Vols fans looking very, very distressed that it's the only tweet I do during Vols games is that it's only when they lose. And I was hoping Sarah Fuller would start the Jeremy Pruitt death spiral or maybe complete it, depending on how it went down. But no, I just couldn't have anything that I wanted over the sports weekend. Of course, getting dragged about Derrick Henry, Teresa coming on this podcast and calling me old, or saying that I look like hell. and now everything that's happening with Vanderbilt and Tennessee. And yet there will be at least one new coach for the universities that played on Saturday. It is being discussed that Clark Lee, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, who is formerly of Vanderbilt, he will be the hire as we tape this. It has not yet been announced, but that is where all things are trending. Does it matter to either of you?
It matters because, the thing that matters to me most is not so much who the coach is, but the fact that I had a conversation, as many in town did last week, with the new chancellor and the AD. And the new chancellor, that sounds like they're ready to spend money. We know Vanderbilt has money. You drive down West End, you can see the money being spent everywhere on that campus, with the exception of athletics. And, the chancellor made clear when I talked with him last Wednesday that they're ready to tap their resources. Their endowment, last I checked, was over $6 billion. Okay. You see the SEC contract, the money's coming in. I mean, they're about to go from $55 million a year contract to $300 million. They've got money and they want this new coach to help them spend it. Clark Lee, the Notre Dame defensive coordinator, he's a guy who's been around a program that's got a lot of the bells and whistles. He's been, at different schools and seen how things have worked. And he's a Nashville native and a guy who was fullback on a team with Jay Cutler back in the early 2000s when, you may have been in grade school then. But, so this is a guy who knows Nashville. He's went to MBA. He knows what this town is like, and he knows Vanderbilt, but he also, he'll have this say on how they spend the money. And yes, I understand the skepticism. I've seen many a plan announced that had no follow through. But at this point, the fact that Vandy wants to spend money, that's the biggest key to me rather than who their coach is.
Well, listen, as far as what the chancellor said and all that, count me among the skeptics. I'll believe it when I see it, but hopefully that will be the case. As far as Clark Lee goes, yeah, I agree with Teresa Walker. I think it's a terrific fit. Nashville native, like you said, understands what goes on, knows how the sausage is made at Vanderbilt, what you're going to be up against from day one and how you overcome it. And I'm glad that, Candace Story-Lee, the AD, didn't, back herself into a corner and say, well, I said publicly I wanted an offensive coach. That's only who I'm going to hire. So, yeah, I feel good about the hire from that standpoint. We'll wait and see what the chancellor does, and we'll wait and see if they actually spend some money and really, really invest in the football program up there, because it's been long overdue. But I like the hire, assuming that all the reports are true and Clark Lee will be the guy.
Jay Cutler, I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. Jay Cutler's freshman year was 2002. I would have been 9 years old, Teresa.
So elementary school, I was right on point. I did rough math in my head, which is always dangerous for a journalist.
You have both been on point, disrespectful though this conversation may have been. Jon Burton of NewsChannel 5. You can also check out his radio show on Nash Sports Radio with Greg Pogue, and listen to him on a regular basis Monday through Friday.
Every Monday at 10:25, the great Teresa Walker joins us. So
you can double up there. If the disrespect on this podcast with JB and T was not enough, you can get it at 10:25 on Mondays on Nash Sports Radio, Jon Burton's radio show. And of course, they react to the games on NewsChannel 5. Steve Lehman, Jonathan Hutton, our friend from the Midday 180, on the television, wherever it is that you get NewsChannel 5. Teresa Walker, of course, you can read her Hall of Fame, esteemed journalist for the Associated Press, and disrespectful though she may be, grateful for both of your time here.
Not letting that go, T. He's not.
I'm legitimately angry. Like I'm gonna have to go do a face mask after this, Teresa, because you really pissed me off.
Calm down, Buck. You look fine. I was just having fun trying to push your ego. Come on, man.
That's just, it's just, I mean, if there's nothing that hurts me. There's nothing in the world that hurts me except if you insult my physical appearance. Like that really bothers me because I'm very vain. I'm very vain about this.
You look fine. And besides, I'm trying to make up for some of the picking and poking and prodding and joking that I've missed out on in this pandemic. So I got it all back in one fell swoop. So
bullshit. You haven't missed out on any of it. It's just been on Twitter. Bullshit, Teresa.
Because when we all get together, we like to rib each other and needle each other, and it's a lot of fun. I miss that. I miss seeing you guys in the locker room during the week and at practice and after games and stuff. So we got to get this vaccine going, get back to where we can gather and be normal again.
Buck, walk it off. Go do a face mask. You'll be fine.
I'm going to, courtesy of our friends who provide this Zoom line, 20% off at getbeast.com, promo code BEAST2020. Goodbye. Both of you get the hell out of here.